Now, wiring up AC in a vehicle does require quite a few different tools, so here's what you'll need. A soldering gun, solder, heat shrink tubing, wire strippers, electrical tape and tubing, multimeter, and quite a bit of wiring, along with having the right plugs for both the high and low pressure switch and for the AC compressor as well. Now, before we start soldering, it's important to know where everything is mapped out in the vehicle, along with knowing how much wiring you'll need, so take a second to do that. Alright, let's begin with our AC compressor plug. So we'll have to be careful with stripping this wire, especially since we don't have much to work with. So I stripped about less than ½ an inch of insulation off the end of each wire, and then I made sure to put my heat shrink tubing on before twisting both wires together. I added just a little bit of flux, just only a dab of it. Then I just slowly heat the wire with my soldering iron and applied a little bit of solder until it started to flow, and I just touch it like that, like so, and it doesn't require very much, especially if you're using silver solder, which bonds really well. So now we twist and tighten up the other side, and we repeat the process of soldering just like that. And don't forget to put your heat shrink tubing over the wire as well, especially if you can't slip it on the other side. Alright, so to heat the heat shrink tubing, I do not have a heat gun, so I'll just have to use a lighter, making sure to heat it up on both sides evenly. Alright, and now that our AC compressor wiring connector is insulated, let's move on to the low pressure switch. So let's loosen this off and get our connector, and I got my first wire twisted and I put a little bit of flux on there, like that, and just a little dab of solder like this. Like so. And we'll heat the heat shrink tubing. Perfect. Now on to our last major component, which is the high pressure switch. Strip, twist, flux, solder, heat. Boom. Once you got your relay along with a good harness for it, here's how you wire it up. This is how you wire up AC for a vehicle that does not have any wiring to the PCM. And notice it's very similar, or I guess exactly the same, for how most people do it on hot rods. Few things to note: make sure you have at least a 15 amp fuse between terminal 30 and the battery. You can see the chassis ground wires marked in this symbol. And the switch, you can customize it and use any switch you want. Now that you know how it's going to be wired up, let's install it. To start off, I disconnected the negative battery terminal and wired up the low pressure switch first, since it was the furthest away in the circuit. I put the wiring in tubing and then wrapped it with electrical tape. And then I was able to tap into the existing factory wiring harness between the condenser and radiator, which helps save on tubing. So I ran that wire to the high pressure switch, which then gets run to the relay. This part goes onto terminal 85. Terminal 30, I have it connected to the starter solenoid like this. On the positive side, that's always on, and in between there you can see I'm running a fuse. Terminal 86 goes inside the cab where I have my light switch. The 12 volt source is from the cigarette lighter. And finally, terminal 87 goes to the AC compressor clutch. If there is enough low pressure and not too much high pressure, the clutch engages, like so. You can think of it as a scratch program like this. If the low pressure gets below around 25 psi, the clutch shuts off and does not engage, until it gets about past 45 psi. The high pressure side, on the other hand, if it gets above 430, then it shuts off the clutch too, until it drops back down around 290 psi. Anyways guys, I hope that this video was helpful in helping you wire up your own AC to your vehicle. If you have any questions or comments, let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching.